We also had a heavyweight battle up in the north, the Big Ten. Two of their three monsters got at it today, Michigan, Penn State. Everybody was curious. Neither one of these two teams, well, really, you got to say it about Michigan because Penn State early on, they did go into Jordan-Hare and knock the hell out of Auburn. So we knew something about Penn State. Michigan, however, they've been playing some knockout ball against smaller opponents. They beat a solid Maryland team. They got together. Michigan 41-17, led by our man, what's our freshman quarterback's name?
JJ McCarthy.
JJ McCarthy. Sorry, I wanted to say Cade McNamara. But they finished up there big on the ground either way. Everybody knows those running backs. Hack, when you watched your boys tonight, your boys both Penn State and your boys both Big Ten, what was your biggest takeaway?
Listen, I'm not going to make excuses. Listen, they got dog. When you give up 418 yards on the ground, you gotta go home, lick your wounds, and figure it out for next week. But I don't think Penn State came out and played their best football. Just surface value. I don't think offensively, defensively, complimentary didn't come out and give Michigan their best shot. But I'm going to give Michigan their full-on roses because if you can go out and command 418 yards against a Big Ten opponent like Penn State, you can do that against damn near anybody in the country, and I don't care who's pulling the trigger for you at that point in time. So that's a great thing to do. George, I think you might be on mute. I couldn't hear you, brother.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry.
There you go.
I'll just agree with you.
No, but I think anytime you can do that, man, huge tip of the cap. Penn State, like, you guys got to move on from this because at the end of the day, you got a gauntlet coming down here. You got Minnesota next week, obviously fell down, and then you got Ohio State. So you got to figure it out. But Michigan's put themselves in a really good position to be staring down that Ohio State game here towards the end of the year. That's gonna ultimately determine the East, in my opinion.
Trevor, you've been part of two different cultures in college football, both with the Aggies and both with the Sooners. You've been on big runs. You've been on teams that have undefeated starts like this. For those kids in that locker room, for most of them, this is round two. They were undefeated like this last year, but it was like kind of new territory. The further they ventured, the more they looked around and like, wow, we're really here. Then they get themselves into the playoffs. Now here they are again, started in the top five, still in the top five, big knockout win today. How valuable is this confidence of seeing yourself knock out teams and you start to carry yourself like a national power?
Yeah, that the experience, to your point, George, it is a huge deal. Young guys that watched older guys that have now moved on playing on Sundays set the tone and develop that culture. Anytime you have a player-run locker room, you're going to have better leaders and more success in the long run. And so the fact that they were there last year, these guys have been there, they can taste it, they can see it. It's now, halfway through the season. I'm looking, the end is in sight. Now, obviously, it's 1 week at a time and all those things. But I will say this. We always talk about, does this game say more about Michigan winning the game or more about Penn State losing the game, and what side do you go on? I think Penn State, to your point, Hack, lick their wounds. They're still going to win a bunch of games in the East. I don't think this was so much as Penn State is bad as it is Michigan is the real deal. And building on that confidence, George, from last year is huge. I mean, you talk about the 400 plus yards on the ground, but we've hit it over the head that Blake Corum is the man. He wasn't even the top rusher today. He was over 150 yards, and he wasn't even the top rusher. So you go, Donovan Edwards, who rushes for more yards than Blake Corum. That's a confidence booster for him. So when his name is called upon down the stretch here, now you've got confidence in two guys that have confidence in themselves that now go out there and we're just rolling. Now, JJ McCarthy's looking at both of these guys. I trust you. Let's rock and roll. Defense is looking to the offense. They're waving from the other end of the bench. Hey, we're going to get you back on the field. I'm going to get you back on the field. And that's when teams start to roll. And I think Michigan has this kind of culture brewing to have a pretty special end of the season.
They have now quickly embraced that Motor City Ford tough attitude, spirit that they have, and their neighbor right there in Detroit. Fellas, Michigan ran the ball 55 times. 55. There's some colleges that haven't run it 55 times yet. Like just in October, 55. That's not a dedication. That's a lifestyle. And then we have to. They're not talking about we need to run the ball. Hack, defense and rushing travel. We talked about that. Those things are portal. I mean, they're portable. You could pack that up and take it anywhere with you. They won't fail. Is that enough given the rest of the landscape and what we see out of the rest? And then Trevor, I want you to talk about Michigan's offensive line probably being the unsung rock stars with these guys that are running 30, 40, 50 yards downfield to finish plays.
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime you can dominate an opposing team, I think they won the time of possession battle like 41 minutes to 18 minutes today against Penn State. Like, it was ridiculous. They dominated them. Whenever you can do that, it doesn't matter who's pulling the trigger. You could have Ohio State over there all you want, but if them horses are are in the pens and in the stable, and they don't have a chance to do anything with them, hey, it looks great, but you're not going to get any production out of it. So those guys need to be on the track, and they need to have reps, and they need to have chances. So if you can command a line of scrimmage, to your point, George, it's a simple game, man. Like, you can turn around and hand the ball off for 3.5 yards every time. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it all day long, and I'm just gonna eat up that clock, and I'm gonna give you limited chances. I'm gonna walk my score in and keep it going. So I think this Michigan team's found a lot of success in that, and I think the nice thing is it's bringing along a very dynamic player in their quarterback position in JJ McCarthy, who young guy, needs to learn, but when you got something like that to rely on, and I think Trevor can talk to this as well, man, dude, it's a huge confidence booster. They got some guys outside. They got a great tight end room. He's just going to continue to develop, and they're going to put him in really good situations. And, it may be this year where it pops. And if it does, it could be really scary. But I think moving forward throughout the next couple of years, when he starts really coming into his own and growing into his oats, he's going to be a damn problem on the national stage.
Yeah, Trevor, I changed my mind unless you really want to answer that question about the O-lineman. To Hack's point, JJ McCarthy is afforded time. First, he's basically redshirted last year, and they gave him a couple series and games all the way through the playoffs. And now they've got the Big Ten's one or two best defense and one of the nation's top rushing attack. And you get a chance to go in there. This is like Russell Wilson stuff with the Seahawks. Legion of Boom, you got Marshawn Lynch behind you, and then you just make a couple plays for us, when you can throughout the course of those 4 quarters. How much of a luxury is that for JJ McCarthy? And then when will he have to start contributing more as we go?
Well, I think throughout this offseason and kind of the QB battle, he doesn't start the year as the starter. You got to remember that. And there's a couple quarterbacks that we can point that finger at. But he kind of knew, right? We talked about that a little bit. He kind of knew he was going to end up being the guy. Now he's the guy. He's got all these weapons around him. He needs to just focus on, and I know this sounds backwards, but not screwing up. All right? Just get the ball in your playmakers' hands. Trust those O-linemen in front of you to do what they do. Hand the ball off to Blake Corum. Make the throws that you're supposed to make and move on down the road. If you do that, you're going to be successful. In my opinion, not quite to the level of what we saw last year out of the Georgia team, but very similar in the fact that, hey, put JT Daniels in there or put anybody else in there for that matter, and these guys are going to operate. Just don't screw it up. That being said, I do want to talk about the offensive line. These guys, after rushing for 400 yards today, we don't even know their names. I couldn't name one of their offensive linemen. But it's something special about that O-line group. Those guys are probably all 5 together as we speak, sitting at a bar, drinking beers together. They're probably in their warm-ups because that's how they roll. But when those guys get together like that and they have that culture from an O-line meeting room, that is something special. And their chests are puffed out. And nobody's patting them on the back, and they're not going to be in the papers. But when they rush for 400 yards, they wear that. They wear that like we do wearing touchdown passes, and they are stoked as an O-line group to have that happen this week. That's going to give them more confidence to give JJ McCarthy a ton of time to throw the ball and to create big, gashing, gaping holes for Blake Corum and the rest of that stable to make some big runs.
We're dropping our merch.
We got to start calling Underwood Daddy Brad. But I'm a big pod guy.
Breaking news. The Field of 68 has an online store, and it's your one-stop shop for the latest and greatest merch in college basketball and college football. You can find shirts to support your favorite team, make fun of your rival team, or boast Field of 68 catchphrases like Daddy Brad, Cussin' and Discussin', and the Star Heels. Go to www.fieldof68.shop today and enter promo code TOUCHDOWN for 20% off at checkout.